Hello and welcome everybody. It's Bev from Living Fabulously, and today I want to talk about a source of toxins from food. And this begins a series of toxins and where you'd find them so that you can know how to protect yourself and your family. So let's talk about food, because in the United States there was widespread contamination of romaine lettuce, and it led to an outbreak of E. coli. So I thought it's really topical and timely for me to talk about toxins in food. And there's three areas that I want to explore with you today. The first is in processed foods. So I'm talking about things that you would buy on a supermarket shelf mostly. And every single thing that you pick up in a box, in a bag, a jar, or a can, when you read the label, it is filled with chemicals and preservatives. Some of the names you can't even pronounce, but a lot of the manufacturers have gone very smart and started using numbers so that you start glossing over the fact that there are a whole lot of toxins in your processed food. Now I'm talking about things that even people consider to be healthy. So like a pasta or a pasta sauce. So please do take notice of these things, because the thing is that those chemicals and additives have a huge impact on the body, and it can increase your cravings. The endocrine disruptors in those chemicals and preservatives can lead to weight gain. So your weight may not be anything to do with what volume that you're eating, or to do with how much you're exercising, which is a common myth as well, but it may be due to these chemicals and additives that you're having. So the numbers, the colors, and the preservatives. The other thing is that it leads to damage in the gut. So you can end up with something called leaky gut, which just creates a whole cascade of inflammation in the body. And then the other one is food allergies. So have you ever wondered why more people are getting more allergic to food? Well, it's because of these chemicals and additives. The second thing is conventional produce. So the problem with conventional produce is that it is sprayed with pesticides to prevent pests, obviously, and often they are genetically modified in terms of making them pest resistant. So for example, things like wheat and corn have been genetically modified and have Roundup, which is a neurotoxic chemical, embedded in the seed. And then that means that when you ingest it, you are ingesting the neurotoxin directly, and your body does not have a mechanism to release this. This neurotoxin is actually, they've had a number of studies where it is linked to things like Alzheimer's and early onset dementia, because the brain obviously is not an environment where there's a lot of movement and physicalness like you do in your body, where you're moving your body. So the brain becomes, if it breaches the blood-brain barrier, it becomes a perfect place to store toxins, which is part of the problem also with things like the rise of ADHD. So there's a lot of evidence in that space. And if you're interested in those researchers, you just have to Google that and you'd find it on some very reputable case studies. The other thing is that when you're eating conventional produce that's filled with pesticides, often you can get cramps in your legs, muscles, so your muscles cramp, and also your heart rate can rise because, as I said, it's a neurotoxin and that stimulates the heart, and obviously the heart is agitated, for want of a better word. And it also can lead to emotional instability. So they have done many studies as well on the link between anxiety, depression, and the use of pesticides. So it's not by chance that somebody who walks around spraying the plants that we eat is covered in a suit and has a breathing mask on them and as they spray the crops. So just think about that for a moment. Then the third thing is contamination, and this is what happened in the United States. So contamination comes about from either at the point of growth, so using contaminated water, so dirty water. It could happen during the transportation of those vegetables and or food, whatever the food is. And in some countries, nobody bothers to clean the truck that's just carried the manure or the sheep or the cattle to market, and then they put vegetables in it. So yes, there's very likely a high level of contamination by manure. The other thing is unwashed hands. Now, this can be in your home or it can be in a restaurant. So the contamination can happen at home, but it's likely to happen in a place where food is prepared and it's not hygienic. And the output of that is that, that level of contamination can lead to vomiting, diarrhea, cramps, and a fever, depending on what bacteria is actually present. So in the United States, it was the E. coli, which doesn't respond to antibiotics. So you have to actually heal and seal the gut doing other measures of detoxing and cleansing. So those are three areas. So I mentioned processed foods, conventional produce, and contamination. So what can we do about it? So there are three keys to protect yourself, and I think these are easy ways, and you can implement them very much, as a way of being. So the first one is, if you want to avoid the contamination and chemicals and additives from processed foods, you would need to eat whole organic foods. So these are things that are recognizable by name as a fruit and a vegetable. And obviously, if you eat something like rice, you would want to make sure that it doesn't have other products added to it. So the way you can do it simply is to avoid things that are in a bag, box, can, or jar. And that they will then always be sugar-free and mostly gluten-free if you're not choosing products that contain gluten. So you're already on a winner there. The second thing is choose pesticide-free organic foods, and they are usually mineral-rich, so they actually support good health in the body. And make sure that when you purchase them that they are not bruised or damaged in some way. So it's really important to pick quality organic food. And yes, you might be thinking, well, it costs more. It's the best insurance that you can have in your health, because that is like a prevention. So by eating organic food, you are preventing the whole inflammatory pathway. You're preventing likely contamination from pesticides. You're preventing the chemicals and additives that have been known to be carcinogenic, endocrine disruptors, a number of things. So you're on a winner. Just think of it as if you like insuring your house. You insure it against drought, floods, and fires, because obviously in drought often buildings constrict and they crack, and in floods you know what happens, and in fires we're experiencing that in Australia right now. So just think of organic food as an insurance. The third thing is to wash all vegetables before using and eating, and before you put them definitely onto your board to cut them. So it's important to wash your hands before you handle food. So if you've ever seen any adverts about hand washing, it takes about 20 seconds to wash your hands properly. So you're washing them in running water with a good quality hand soap, and preferably one that's not also got other toxins in, but we'll talk about that another time. But you wash all fruit and vegetables before you peel them. And if it's a firm skin, you would take a brush and scrub it so that it actually removes any dirt. And if it was something like broccoli, where it's sort of got nooks and crannies in it, you would actually soak those for at least 1 to 2 minutes. And I prefer to just use, there are products on the market that are organic that you can spray your vegetables with, but I prefer just to use a good quality Himalayan salt in water and soak the vegetables that don't spoil. Now, some vegetables, if you soak them, for example, cucumbers, zucchini, if you soak them and then store them, they become very mushy. So you store those apart from the vegetables that you've washed. And when you wash the vegetables, be sure to dry them properly with paper towel. So that's all for today. I hope those were really helpful ways to avoid toxins and 3 key ways that you can protect yourself. Bye for now, and remember, let's live the fab life together.